Hi, and welcome into this Telstra virtual event. I'm Justin Cleveland, and today we're talking about how to innovate using digital collaboration solutions. The thing is, there are a lot of tools out there, but how you use them best in your particular business depends on a wide variety of factors. So today we brought in Dustin Kehoe from IDC, as well as Boris Corluka from Telstra to talk about this. We'll get into that in just a moment. I want to let you know, though, some of the things you can do here on the Telstra Virtual Events platform. Along the bottom of your screen, you will see some widgets. Along in there is a is a Twitter tab. We want you to join the conversation using hashtag Telstra Virtual Events. You'll also see a Q&A box. That is for you to submit questions during the course of this conversation. How deep we go really depends on you, so please submit your questions during the course of this event. You can also resize and move around the boxes on your screen as you see fit. So, that all said, let me introduce my guests here today. First is Dustin Kehoe. He is the Practice Head of Telecom Services at IDC. He is in the Asia Pacific and joining us today from Singapore. Thank you for joining us, Dustin.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon.
Also joining us is Boris Corluka. He is the Director of Unified Communications for Telstra. Welcome in, Boris.
Thanks, Justin. Boris Corluka here. Looking forward to the discussion. Exciting topic.
Excellent. I am Justin Cleveland. I'm your host for today's event. So let's jump in by first asking you a question, and that is, how important is reaching outside your current perimeter? Do you want to be a global company? And perhaps you are a global company as well. But we also want to know that you want to expand, but you don't have a particular target in mind. You may think that expansion is nice, but not an essential feature of your business. Maybe you are very content in your current situation. You have a very local customer base and are very content serving that local base. Or you're in some other situation entirely. Please let us know that. And again, we'll sort of shape our conversation based on the variety of things that you bring to us here in this conversation. So let us populate the answers to this first poll question. And the first 30% want to be a global company, and about 46.2%, in fact, the majority want to expand, but don't have a particular target in mind. And I'm going to pass this off now to you, Dustin, and talk about some of the things that you're seeing when you talk to a variety of companies. Do they feel that expansion is particularly important?
Yeah, at the moment, it's interesting because the single biggest priority for a lot of businesses is actually market expansion and really capturing more wallet share with their customers. And so when we think of this technology, it's about how we bring it all together to achieve these outcomes. So yeah, very, very much so, Justin. I guess, should we just segue into this presentation with that comment in mind? Okay, great. So that's a great segue, because really what we're talking about today is kind of demystifying the linkages between customer experience, omnichannel, and digital transformation. And at IDC, when we say the word digital transformation, we're not suggesting that you're moving from analog to digital. That's a conversation 20 years ago. But it's really about how do we use digital technology to improve the way in which we engage customers, or you engage your customers, and the quality of that interaction. It also means employees, partners, and suppliers. It's not just limited strictly to external customers. Next slide, please. So what we're saying, and we can just build this out, what we're saying here is, in Australia particularly, 46% of Australians see themselves in the midst of digital transformation. And that is one of the highest ranking countries in the entire region. We've looked at 13 countries, and Australia, as usual, scores the highest for this one. Now, in digital transformation, if you're communications, media, manufacturing, resources, or banks and financial services, it's off the Richter scale. You actually think that this is extremely important, and it's the single biggest priority amongst all others, and it weights much higher than the 46%. But to get to this, you need to understand really the personas. If you're developing an enterprise-wide strategy for technology, you need to understand the different personas in your organization. The reason for that is because technology is no longer solely, exclusively in the domain of IT or in the CIO. But you'll see a lot of different decision makers wanting to achieve different outcomes. For example, the chief marketing officer really wants multi-channel, the ability to understand all its customers and how they engage through social, mobile, bricks and mortar, contact center, and so forth. They're really interested in the latest and greatest technologies, as we have in the box down here. They want to bring it all together. The COO is interested in operations automation. The CFO really wants to see how IT can drive wallet share. And the CIO is still relevant, very relevant, but it's also looking at, operational efficiency and productivity gains. Next slide, please. So when we bring this all together, one more build, is we have something that we call the intersection between technology and business process. For example, we need to make sure that on the leadership grid, we need to make sure that we're able to drive more customers through loyalty. An omni experience, it has to do with the multi-channel engagement. For information, it's really gleaning insights from the data that sits out there. How do we turn data, unstructured data, to market and intelligent insights? Making sure that we have agility in the operations, that IT can be responsive and relevant to the end users. And then, of course, the work source is making sure that we are able to attract the right talent. Next slide, next build. So what we have here at IDC, or what we define, is something called the third platform. What we're suggesting here is every single area that you invest in, or the majority of your investments going forward, will be based on social, mobile, big data, and cloud. That differs from client-server environments that ran for about 25 years before that, or mainframe, which we associate very much with the first platform. So what we're suggesting here is you have to look at technology with the intersection of the leadership grid to drive this digital outcome. And there's a lot of acceleration that will be going into this technology, such as Internet of Things, next-gen security, and cognitive computing. And that together will pretty much reshape, if not transform, IT and drive this market towards digital transformation. If we can move to the next slide, I have some more details. Now what we're seeing here is we're asking what the role of IT is in a changing marketplace. Now, 20% of you are basically telling us you're opportunists. You're actually going to look for IT to create and define new workflows altogether. 18%, a little bit boring, are followers. You're going to see what your competitors are doing with IT as it relates to digital transformation. 33%, or a third of you, are optimizers, where you'll constantly look for IT to improve an existing business process, but you won't be creating one per se. Interestingly, down here is 12% of you are disrupted, meaning IT is sort of disrupting your business, and you need to kind of reconsider what you're going to do about it to stay in business. And 16% of you are using IT to create new business models. And for this last two bullet points, think of, on the one hand, you have your Airbnbs that are disrupting the market. On the other hand, you have maybe your hoteliers who find their market share disrupted because of IT. And that moves us to the first polling question on slide 13.
Yeah, so let's ask, do you see yourself in terms of Dustin's categorizations? And Dustin, why don't you lay out for us again how you would define an optimist?
Okay, an optimist is one that actually looks to, an optimizer is one that looks to IT to optimize existing business processes, to capture existing workflows and to try to improve them along the way. A follower is just basically one that waits to see what everybody else is doing. Then, of course, you have the disrupted and the creators down at the bottom. The disrupted are the ones that are on the short end of the stick, and the creators are actually looking for new ways to get into new and adjacent markets, to use IT for competitive advantage.
Excellent. I had a question come in from AV, which is the Chief Digital Officer, is the CDO a reality now? And what role do you see, how is that going to impact all of the traditional segments of a business?
Well, I don't think it's going to really impact. The role of like a Chief Digital Officer is actually to really automate the business. It's to reduce the paper-based processes, to make businesses be more responsive to the market need and their customers. And so a good CDO should actually be working within the different lines of business and building up some kind of coalition to try to achieve an enterprise-wide strategy. That's the role. It's an augmenter. It's not a replacement for the way in which we do things. It's to improve the way we do things.
Excellent. So looking at the results from our poll, the optimizer and the follower look to be the top two, which I don't think is a surprise because it is the way that we view business. And obviously the disruptor is last because if that's why Airbnb and Uber are making their name is because they're shaking up those industries.
Yeah, it is interesting, and only 3% in Australia are actually consider themselves disrupted. But I also thank you for your honesty. That's great, and we hope to add value to everyone in this group.
Excellent. So let's jump back into the two-in-a-box role.
Yeah, so this is the role of the new CIO, right? And it fits into a lot of things. You're still going to have your job in governance, security, compliance, all of the things that a CIO has been good at, you still have to do. But guess what? Now you have to get into innovation. You have to be able to articulate a vision and a framework. You have to work in partnerships with the lines of business, and you have to co-create new services. If you are that creator jumping into a new adjacent market using technology to your advantage, then you have to, and most definitely, involve the lines of business. And it's really about developing a group-wide strategy. So if we move to the next slide, we ask the question, what business process do you really consider for strategic transformation? And really quickly, the first places you're going to look at admin and operations, customer experience, sales and marketing, and down at finance, which is interesting. That's what our survey says based on the respondents for Asia Pacific. But if you move to the next slide, and what I'm trying to say here is how does this all tie into unified communications and collaboration? Well, if we're looking at digital transformation, we believe that UC&C is very relevant, but not everybody on this call is at the same place of this journey. And what we've done is we've surveyed thousands of businesses around the world to sort of help them as a tool to plan and adopt, set forward for planning and the adoption of unified communications and to see where they rank against their peers, see basically how they progress. And you can do this by business size, you can do this by industry, you can also rank countries against one another. So getting into Adhoc, which we define as pretty much stage one, at the next slide. The Adhocers are basically telling us, if we can move to the next slide.
Yeah, it's up there. You may have to refresh your browser, but okay. The Adhoc is up.
No worries. Okay. So the Adhocers are basically telling us that there's most of the services are from the web. There's little or no support from IT. UC&C are all about individual achievers and that sort of thing. And the best possible outcome you can get is you get confirmation that the stuff works and a proof of concept. You still are going to have problems with no budget, limited familiarity, and fiefdoms. And when I talk to customers in the ad hoc stage, typically what I find is that by fiefdom I mean you have your networking people that might be very centered around a PBX, and you might have your software people that really understand collaboration. But the two are very much disjointed in the first stage. Now, if we can move to the next slide, we have the opportunistic stage. And here we're talking about, we've already moved from the proof of concept, and in this phase we're actually trying to scale up unified communications. We're trying to focus on what it can actually solve. We might have achieved sponsorship at a departmental level, but we still have various silos. We still see that it's costly to deploy. There's still a big job ahead in terms of end user education. But the outcome that we get at this stage is we actually are able to see that the opportunities are there and they're visible and they're transparent to us. We also have a functional deployment. We actually have something that sort of works now and is going through a scaled up implementation phase. And if we can move to the next slide, we see here in the repeatable stage that the opportunities are identified, and you see the thawing of silos. You have the organizational mandate. You have various use cases and a documented strategy. You might find some that are resistant to change, but the opportunities are identified, and the business impacts are basically to the different islands within an organization. I can take you a few slides back, you might have remembered that business process transformation will begin around admin and operations, sales and marketing, and so forth. This is what's actually happening with this phase called repeatable in unified communications.
Now, we had a question come in from Dave, which he's asking the question what you meant about no linkage to network.
Well, yeah, because typically in a lot of organizations, the network is considered the commodity, the plumbing within the organization, and IT departments have not really been doing a good job at phase one of talking to the networking people. Likewise, the networking people have not really done a very good job of talking to the IT people. So, for example, the networking people might really want to push a Cisco product because their familiarity with PBX is great, whereas the IT people might want to say that unified communications is a Microsoft product because their familiarity with Microsoft is great. And what we see is two different conversations happening in parallel, and they're not really coming together in some sort of integrated way. And as a result, you get these fiefdoms that we're talking about.
Now, you talk about the silos and you talk about the fiefdoms, I feel like we're just saying, digital unified communications solutions solve all issues. Do they bring up other issues?
Well, yeah, they don't. I mean, technology alone isn't going to solve any, these issues. You have to actually, bring people together. There's a technological component to it and a human part to it. And what we really need to do is try to work together with the lines of business and bringing this agenda forward.
Excellent. So let's jump through then to our next state, which is the managed.
Okay, that's fantastic. So when we start to look at managed, this is actually a great place to be because now you have a formal strategy. You're extending unified comms outside of the firewall. You have standards that emerge. You have business processes that are changing, and you have sort of end-user training institutionalized or ingrained within your organization. Because if the end users are not trained up, they're not going to get full advantage to it. And this is kind of cool too because you're now extending unified comms past the firewall. You're getting into things like federated presence where you can connect to customers and suppliers and everyone else you need to within that ecosystem. And you have the multiplier effect because everybody is on it. Everybody is using it. And you're really beginning to see the alignment of business processes to unified communications applications, which is a neat place to be.
No kidding. Let's talk very quickly. I had a question come in about jargon, which is the UC&C. What do you mean when you say unified communications, and what does UC&C really mean?
Okay. Well, I mean, unified comms is a rather catch-all statement, but I mean, we're talking about IM, instant messaging, and presence. We're talking about voice and different messaging platforms coming together. Not all parts of UC&C have to be voice-enabled. Some are video-enabled, or some are based on other types of platforms. But it's basically bringing all the different ways in which we communicate internally and externally together in a sort of a single console or dashboard in a way that makes sense and in a way that actually drives business benefits.
Yeah, so that's a really good thing to know, too, because, I mean, when you talk about ad hoc, that's, I think, the way a lot of businesses operate, even if they've been established for a while, but if they're starting that digital change, people are happy with their old SMS systems for communication, which is great, but it's not institutional. So if there are massive staff changes or, you bring on a ton of new people, having that old process just isn't going to work for a ramp-up.
I was speaking, this is the case in point, I was speaking to a large pharmaceutical company yesterday, and when they went on their journey of unified comms, they had different PBXs for every single office location. So the PBX functionality can only talk to other PBXs that were physically in that office. And the problem that they're facing is they're becoming a global organization, and they have to work in global teams. Now, having these siloed PBXs talk to each other in one office with limited functionality is not going to get them there. So therefore, they're investing entirely, they're betting their future on how we, get into a platform-wide, a global platform-wide approach to to all of our communications and all of our collaboration, which includes video conferencing. How do we bring customers and partners and suppliers, and more importantly, employees together to drive innovation? And really what we're after is, if we go back to this concept of digital transformation, how do we use technology for innovation, for competitive advantage, to get closer to our customers and to capture more wallet share?
Excellent. So let's run then into the optimized business, which is a great position to be in because you've done a lot of the legwork.
Now, the optimized, you're really good at the optimized vision because you've gone through the 4 stages, you've gone through the pain points, you now pretty much have an enterprise-wide strategy, everybody's on board, you're kind of at this utopia place. You're looking at, not to get too technical, but APIs and how APIs can be integrated into UC to drive different business processes. You're accelerating your time to market. You have end-to-end connectivity inside and outside the firewall. The impossible becomes the possible. That's a great place. But still, just because you're there doesn't mean you stand still. Your biggest challenge is prioritizing. Now that you have everyone accepted that UC is the way to go, you've got to prioritize the different requests, and you cannot get complacent because your competitors one day will catch up. And there are certain industries that are very, very advanced with unified comms, and if you believe technology is important for competitive advantage in certain industries, like let's compare banks against banks, complacency can actually be your worst enemy.
Yeah. So it brings it to mind, just looking at this from a managerial perspective, I get a little bit nervous when you talk about, the technology because it sounds expensive. But it's not just about spending a ton of money, but it's spending it strategically, right?
Well, exactly. You have to define to business outcomes. 10 years ago when I first learned the term unified comms, I was at a large end user event, and the question was asked, is unified communications a solution to a problem, a solution to a problem, or a problem to, is unified comms a solution to a problem or a solution looking for a problem? And one side of the room laughed and said that it's a solution looking for a problem, and the vendor said, no, we really solve problems. We've gone a long ways in 10 years, and really it's not about spending money or sweating assets. It's really being able to think strategically, what do I need right now to drive the business outcomes that are most important for everyone else, for my business. And what I'm talking about is not just the CIO, but the chief marketing officer, the chief executive officer, getting everyone on board and figuring out what's wildly important and focusing our efforts there. You should not just go out and blow all the bells and whistles and think you're going to, get from 1 to 5. You need to think about it in stages. You need to figure out, right, if you're at stage 2, how do I get to stage 3? And do I need to go to stage 4? Maybe stage 3 is perfect for where you're at. A small and medium enterprise with maybe 50 employees may not need to go past stage 3.
Right. If you're all in one site, and I love video phones, but they're great for when I'm communicating between Sydney and Melbourne or Sydney and Brisbane. But really, if everybody were in the same building, it would be an extravagance and not necessarily something that we need at that moment.
Yes, but if you flip that on its head and you say, okay, well, my customers are communicating with me through mobile apps, through social network. I value what people are talking about us or tweeting about us. Then, of course, you really need to think about, a holistic omni-channel strategy, because customers will talk about you whether you want them to or not. They will make buying decisions through multi-channels, and everything is pretty much on their terms, not yours anymore. So, depending on what type of business you are, you really need to think about this very carefully.
Yeah. So let's bring up the question to you in the audience, which is, how would you describe yourself in the 5 stages that Dustin described? Are you ad hoc, just beginning your journey? Are you opportunistic, repeatable, managed, or are you fully optimized? While you answer those questions, we've actually got the numbers to back up what your survey said. And Dustin, you did a survey of how many people? How wide did this go?
Well, we did a couple thousand worldwide. So we looked in a number of different markets. And what I did is I looked at the trends around the region. I compared the fact that Australia has a very large SME footprint to other countries that have a large SME footprint. I made a few assumptions, and I came to a conclusion that the majority of Australians, this is just an IDC projection, is probably at stage 2, at 38%.
Mm-hmm. So let's find out now.
Yep. Okay.
Wow. Here's our result. From the people here, and it actually makes sense because we've got a lot of people on this call, about a third of them, who are starting this journey and are looking for the suggestions of where to go. So that's excellent. And about 21% are opportunistic. So let's compare that figure now to the numbers that you pulled globally, and then here in Australia.
Yeah. So I thought most of you would actually be in the opportunistic phase. But in fact, if I compare with the call, I'm seeing that majority, the biggest numbers, is coming in Adhoc, which is fine. But that's actually quite interesting. But we're saying, I think, in our survey that maybe 63% are in the first 3 phases, right? Whereas in the other survey, we're saying 70%. So we're still pretty much in line on stage 1, 2, and 3. There's just a little bit more weight towards Adhoc with the individuals on this call.
Yeah, well, that's fascinating. Very interesting stuff.
Okay.
So let's take a look now at the priorities and where we should be looking to go next.
Okay. Yeah, great. So when you ask the organization its challenges and priorities, and we get it, is IT is very complex. And whether you're talking about unified communications, collaboration, big data, cloud, something like that, it's very difficult to understand. So oftentimes you don't have the skill set. There's a lack of budget. And sometimes there's not really that sort of thought leadership in terms of what do we need to go to do next to get to that next step. For example, we found that with our maturity scape for unified communications and collaboration. And there's a few more builds in here, Justin.
Yep.
And so the real trick is, there we go. And the real trick is, understanding the technological bit that we discussed as well as the human bit, and really unlocking the productivity and innovation that sits dormant in your workplace, whatever stage you're in. And making sure that you have the right architecture over time to support the workspace as it is today, but really the future ways of working. That's what we're getting at. And I think that would probably be a nice segue into what Boris is observing as Telstra in the marketplace.
Yeah, great. Thank you very much, Dustin. We've got questions coming in, and I do encourage you in the audience to submit your questions, not only about what you're seeing globally, but also where we can start. And at that point, we'll bring in Boris Corluka to talk a little bit about some of the disruptions that are happening, that are making changes. Boris, go ahead.
Thanks, Justin. Thanks, and Dustin as well. Fantastic sort of describing of what's happening in the marketplace. I'll talk a little bit about what Telstra is doing in this space as well. And the slide that you got up now is sort of just what I think most people are aware of, but I'll just point to a couple elements to describe this disruption that's going on in the unified communication and collaboration space. And I do believe we're in the midst of a revolution over the next couple of years, and wouldn't want to be anywhere else to see how all this sort of develops. And just to remind people, collaboration in this context that I'm talking about includes all of our voice communications, our video communications, and all the content and data, such as chat sessions, instant messaging, emails, document sharing and the like. All of that together is what I'm referring to as collaboration. It includes contact center solutions as well as our video collaboration type solutions. I want to point to a couple of major disruptions that we're all responding to, and then take you through how Telstra is reacting to these. And I'll pick a few that are on the slide here. Maybe starting in the top left-hand side, the shift that's happening from premise to cloud. That's a major transition that's happening in the marketplace. It means many things to many people. And at the moment in the collaboration space, there's probably somewhere around 20% or so of companies that have their solutions for collaboration in the cloud, and the majority are still on premise. But that's shifting, and it's shifting at different paces for different technologies. We're finding that some of the video services, contact center services are moving pretty quickly to the cloud. And then the base telephony and IP telephony services are moving along as well. and I'm finding that I suspect that in the next few years we'll find that there'll be a bigger shift. And if we can get to half and half, 50-50 delivered from the cloud and 50 from the premise in the next 3-4 years, I think that'll be fantastic. So there'll be solutions delivered from the premise will be there for a while, but the shift to cloud is accelerating. Another thing to keep in mind for a lot of organisations, it becomes a discussion around convenience versus control, and making that decision to move your collaboration services to the cloud does take a bit of thinking, and how much you feel you're in control of those services. And that discussion for each organisation varies depending whether a small company or a medium-sized company or a large company. For large companies where we're seeing a lot of this transition, the cloud is really just a different way of deploying their collaboration services. And as we move down the marketplace, we get to the point where cloud is almost a SaaS type offering, where customers and end users can just buy services off the web with their credit card and a click of a button. So there's a lot of things that cloud means, but it's definitely one of the big transitions we're seeing. It also affects the way people consume and purchase their collaboration services. There'll be a lot more subscription pricing models, a lot more OPEX or expenditure-driven purchasing as opposed to capital expenditure-driven purchasing. So a lot of changes there. Another one I want to pick on is on the top right-hand side, that shift from appliances to applications, or from hardware to software. That's driving another whole scale and speed of innovation. And scale and speed are the big things there. You know, even in Telstra, the size that we are, keeping up with the changes that are going on and the pace that versions are being upgraded is a massive undertaking. And therefore, partnering with organisations that are able to upgrade the versions of their various collaboration software on a 6-monthly, a quarterly, or even a monthly cycle time is becoming more and more important. And also, the amount of innovation we're seeing between software and collaboration applications, and how that links together with networks that are becoming more in the software space, or cloud technology in the software space, is all big changes. And the last one I want to point to was another disruption, is the shift from productivity to business outcomes. And the conversations that I'm having with our customers in the collaboration space has fundamentally changed over the journey of the last few years. If we think back to, say, 1989, when ISDN was introduced into Australia, that was a massive disruption in businesses in Australia, because it really revolutionised the front door of the business, where with things like direct in-dial, our customers were able to get directly into the ones to talk to without necessarily having to go through a receptionist or a switchboard, but directly to the individual you want to speak to. That fundamentally changed the way businesses operate and interact with their customers. And if you move forward now to, say, 10 years ago, 2003, 2004, when SIP got introduced, or the next innovation around collaboration with IP-based technologies, that really fundamentally changed the back office of organisation, where we no longer had as much of a different network for your computer networks and a different network for your communication networks. They were put together, and we had one network, and bringing together voice and computers in a fundamental way that really added productivity to the back end of the office. And now fast forward to today, and we see the revolution that's happening with web technologies and apps, and communications being available through browsers and the like. And that's really next level of revolutionisation that's happened in the business. So it's really transforming businesses. In many ways, it's turning them inside out by being able to expose their various operations through the web page directly to their customers. So their end users are able to engage in a operational activity, whatever that may be, purchasing a mortgage or an insurance contract, or reporting an issue to their organisation directly through the web page to the back office operations. So fundamental change is happening, and I think most of the partners, customers, providers in this space are all adopting these various disruptions into their services, and we're seeing them pop up everywhere. So I really do refer to this as almost as a silent revolution that's happening, and that I think over the next few years will fundamentally change the way businesses consume and offer their collaboration services within their organisation and outside to their own customers.
I had a question come in for you, Boris, from Fraser, which is how will we create greater speed to market and the flexibility with the collaboration platforms?
So speed to market is a fantastic advantage as one of those business outcomes, and it really comes together by bringing together delivery of these services through cloud technologies. That certainly improves your speed to market, because it means we can fire up technologies a lot quicker without having to go through long cycle times for investments or purchasing decisions and the like. And secondly, these things being software-driven applications, they're a lot quicker to deploy to organisations and a lot quicker to be consumed. And thirdly, by making it familiar and intuitive. And I think sort of the game's pretty much over in terms of the way our end users want to consume collaboration technologies, and that is through devices such as smartphones and tablets. That is a platform where we can sort of improve the speed to market for a lot of these type of technologies. So partnering with organisations that can sort of deliver all these technologies and can work with organisations to understand how they want to serve their customers, how they want to improve the way they service their customers. It's not a technology discussion anymore. I think the technology is there with the cloud technologies, with the software applications and the like, and it's really about our limitation is what we can imagine. It's not the technology to deliver it. I think a lot of those elements are getting put in place. Yes, there's still a lot to do with integrating technologies, but I truly believe that we're pretty much limited by how we can imagine the use cases we want to deliver. Okay, I can see you moved on to the next slide, Justin. So
yes.
This slide talks a little bit about what business transformation means. And the transformation, I believe, is going to come through innovation. And just to sort of pause for a sec to describe my view of innovation, it's not what we see in the popular press about a light globe going over somebody's head, but it's really the connected mind. I truly believe that innovation comes from people and individuals who are connected widely, connected within their organisations across many different portfolios and departments, connected outside of their organisation to other organisations and to other geographies, and connected to other industries, other professions, and sharing all that information is, I think, what's going to drive the next round of innovation to move forward Australian businesses and global businesses for that matter. And this is where the title here, 1 + 1 + 1 is greater than 3. Because the way I'm thinking about this and the way we're driving Telstra's response to the disruptions we're talking about is across these 3 pillars, what I've called connections, collaboration and creation. So just might spend a minute on each of these to give you a sense on why these are fundamental, and bringing them together will help organisations drive innovation to deliver on speed to market and to deliver on new business outcomes and deliver on better ways to service their customers. So starting on the left-hand side of this chart, more connections and how we can achieve more connections. This is really a discussion about the perimeter of your organisation. And with sort of the perimeter of a defined network and the physical boundaries of the buildings where our people work and the customers and they may come to interact with, that perimeter is being expanded in many fronts. The first way is through the adoption of mobile technologies. So smartphones and tablets and the way phone calls, the way video sessions, the way emails, the way chat sessions, the way documents are now shared, they're very readily shared on devices outside of an organisation. So that has a whole bunch of implications the way people work, to be able to experience their collaboration solutions in the desk, such as a voice call or a video call or sharing documents in the same way when they're away from the desk, which could be at home, which could be while they're travelling, which could be when they're at the cricket club, wherever they are. So the demand for that and the way people are working now by consuming and expecting to consume collaboration service in a familiar, intuitive way outside of the business as they do inside the business, and the role that mobility devices have is a fundamental thing. And one of the things that we're doing in Telstra is bringing together the collaboration experience on a fixed device, our data networks together with our mobile devices such as smartphones and tablets. So that's an important point. The second way the perimeter of organisation is expanding is through the web. And so the technologies and the solutions we're talking about in terms of voice and video and data sharing now can be experienced quite usably on the public internet. And therefore, being able to build on-ramps and off-ramps to be able to connect to the public internet and reach people wherever they are around the world. Even organisations that may be one of our customers, the Telstra customers, and want to talk to somebody that's on the other side of the world, it's got nothing to do with your organisation or nothing to do with our Telstra's network, we can still get there, connect to them over the public internet. And therefore, having the firewall technologies, having the bandwidth control technologies, having the, as I said, the on-ramps and the off-ramps into the public internet is another important element of expanding the perimeter of organisation. So, with the traditional network technologies of VPNs and MPLS type networks, if people are familiar with that terminology, that delivers high security, high quality of service, there's a fundamental need for that for our businesses. But the point I'm making is that that's expanding, and the perimeter of organisation is expanding to embrace mobile devices and also expanding to embrace the public internet. So that's one important point about ensuring that more people can experience voice, video and content at more places. So collaboration and this transformation that we're talking about is not just limited within your organisation and the island of one business, but the demand and the need to be able to experience that full immersive collaboration experience outside of the perimeter of your organisation is now available. That's the first point. And moving across to the middle part of this chart, the more collaborations. And this is a fundamental shift there where three elements of the workplace are coming together, and that is the physical workspace together with the behaviours and cultures now expected in the workplace and connecting that with the technologies. And Telstra's put a label on this called the future way of working. And it really is about expanding that collaboration technology, expanding the way people can collaborate, and recognising that it's not just a technology discussion. It's very much discussion with the HR department about how do we attract talent, how do we retain talent within an organisation, and how do we support the way people want to work. A sales force may want to work differently from a development organisation, and ensure we can build zones to deliver those outputs. And that's part of that drives the collaboration, getting more people connected so they can more readily share their technologies and more readily share their ideas and more readily develop new innovation. And even within Telstra, we've sort of adopted this new way of working we call future ways of working, and moving people to a place where you don't necessarily have your desk and you don't necessarily have a hard device such as a phone on your desk to collaborate with, but you're relying on soft devices, you're relying on your laptop or your smartphone or your tablet, and there's a whole bunch of new issues that come up with that. And I'll talk a little bit more about those when we do a case study towards the end of this presentation. The third pillar I want to talk to is about creativity. And it's a very subtle point here on what that means. And it goes to the point Dustin was talking about around APIs, which is really a way to allow our customers to build their own collaboration platforms. And the subtlety here is that as Telstra, we don't see that we have all the answers for how an organisation wants to innovate. But we do see we're able to provide the platform to allow customers to innovate themselves. And that means giving access to things like APIs, giving access to a platform where our customers can imagine the way they want their own collaboration platforms to work, and they can build their own by linking it into their business processes, by linking into the way they want to serve their customers, by surfacing that into their own apps, surfacing it into their own IT applications, so they can deliver new ways for their own staff to collaborate, but also new ways that their customers can interact with their organisation. So those three pillars of getting more connections across mobiles, web and our private networks, together with the changing shape of the workplace, the physical environments and the behaviours and cultures now surfacing in those organisations, and finally by allowing businesses to build their own collaboration services, enabling that by exposing things such as APIs, is what I think will drive to that next level of innovation. And it's only through that innovation organisations will be able to transform their business and deliver those things such as speed to market and better service to their customers.
You brought up the point about the Telstra changeover for the future ways of working, and I've been with Telstra for just under a year here, and I got to say, going back to regular phones without video to me is just silly because the video makes for a great experience. AV had the question from the audience: do you believe that video is the new voice?
Absolutely, absolutely, and I think sort of experiencing a collaboration session, a communication session these days without video is a major step backward. I know various organisations are on different paths on this journey, and Dustin described to us what that maturity scape is. But I do believe that video is the next voice, and I also do believe that bringing voice and video, that real-time communication with non-real-time communication is the next round of innovation. So video is just part of the journey. There's more to it than that. And I do see that the way we can consume video is now fundamentally changing. To give you a couple of statistics, video is not just those big screens we see in various rooms. The organisations will deal with have that maybe in penetrations rates or adoption rates in the order of 5-10%. Now, it's also very much now moved to a personal video experience, such as on a desktop or on an individual desk or a laptop. But beyond that, it's become an application, a bit of software on a smartphone or a tablet. And the sort of mix that I'm seeing is that you might get about 10% of rooms and physical sort of big screens in the boardroom style adoption of video. The next sort of 20 or 30 on a personal experience on a desk or a laptop. But the majority will be software applications that customers and end users want to consume on smartphones and tablets. So video is becoming pervasive. At the same time, it's something that needs to be thought through very specifically on how we can increase the adoption on that. It's not something that can just be thrown out within an organisation and expect to get taken up. There are ways you can integrate that into your core unified communication platform, so it works as simply as a phone call. There are ways you can sort of have fully integrated and managed boardrooms and environments to set up the small, medium, large rooms, and there are ways to support large-scale use of video on applications of smartphones and tablets across the general workforce. So it's a big topic, but I certainly do believe that it's not just the next voice, it's more the next voice and will drive the next level of innovation we're seeing. But it does take that relationship between all of us humans to another level, and again, I think that's what's needed to drive innovation and the connected mind.
You know, it's funny, as I think about it, I've been less than kind sometimes when frustrated with customer service representatives, but just seeing that face, I think, would build a level of trust and would keep tempers from flaring. I mean, there are very, very simple things for a variety of people and a variety of industries that it would definitely benefit, but there's got to be widespread adoption for it to really reap those benefits.
Yeah, absolutely agree. And I think we're on the cusp of that widespread adoption happening. For many years we had the video was almost an executive level experience, and there's no need for it to be just an executive level experience. With the adoption available through, as I said, smart devices and through the web and for applications, it can now be an experience available to everybody.
Yeah, so that
if
brings
I can interject here. If I can just interject here as just the analyst, the other thing that we're seeing is the networks are getting much faster. That's both fixed and mobile, but the codecs for video are getting much smaller. And the two together is what's really driving ubiquity of video and the immersive presence. It's extending, from the boardroom to your devices to a lot of other places and becoming more embedded in business processes because of these two driving factors. So I completely agree with you, Boris, and that's what we're seeing as well.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. It's standard from, I think, the term people are using from the boardroom to the browser. And all those options are there across all the various networks. But it does take a bit of thinking, a bit of understanding of what goals an organisation wants to achieve, and a bit of help to put all that together so that the end user does have a good experience. One of the researchers surveys we did across Asia on why video fails and why in fact collaboration fails is because the end user is not supported and trained and encouraged to use these services. And to get that adoption really does depend on supporting the end users, and that goes back to your maturity scape, Dustin, to assure that organisation goes down that path and to have a compelling experience for end users to be able to consume these new collaboration services in a simple way.
Yep.
Okay, we'll keep moving on the slide that we've got up on the computer at the moment. Just wanted to share with you that I think we're just on the start of a journey. All the things that were spoken about around connectivity and collaboration and more innovation and creativity, it's just the beginning. There's a big journey to go for us down this path. And the chart here, I'll just sort of quickly go from the bottom and move up. More connections is around more communications and the cloud technology and the like. The point I want to make here is that it's reasonably simple to have a compelling experience on a single technology island or within a single organisation. And the topic I was talking about, however, that the perimeter of organisations expanding quite rapidly, that really does demand for integration and bring these technologies together. So not every organisation is going to be on the same technology flavour, whether that's a Cisco or a Microsoft or whatever technology there may be in the space, and therefore connecting those things together through intelligence in networks, through transcoding and translating is an important part. And that is one thing that Telstra does invest a fair bit on to ensure that businesses can operate and interconnect with other businesses. It's not just a single island type experience. The next journey around that more collaboration experience is an important one, and this is really around future ways of working and having a service and focus on how these technologies can be adopted in the workplace and thinking about it in the physical environment they'll operate in and thinking about it in the human and behaviours that come into this space and how they can transform businesses is an important part. And that really does lead to that innovation that I was talking about, which will move the businesses forward in their transformation journey, the way they operate internally. The next sort of layer up is around that business process transformation, which really comes from embedding collaboration technologies within the operational processes of every organisation. So however they interact with their end users, for taking orders, for reporting faults, for a sales process, for an innovation process, for whatever it may be, to embed communication technologies within that. But there's more to come. And the label I've got here is contextual communications. And this is really where we bring collaboration in the context of what's happening. And what this really means is bringing real-time and non-real-time communications together as one persistent experience. So it's no longer a discussion of I can have a phone call with somebody or a video call with somebody, and when I finish that communication, we hang up and that communication is gone. It's about an experience where that communication is now persistent and held into the cloud, and I can come back to that anytime I like. And in that particular communication object, there's all my documents, all my emails, all my chat sessions alike. Some of the technologies that we're seeing now, some of the innovation we're seeing now are really bringing that together. And that's an exciting part, because we're really now putting context around our communications and we're allowing people to come and collaborate and join new ways. And the example would be that you may have just a corporate meeting and your discussion is recorded in a set of action points, and that's available to everybody to come back and refer to that any time. So you're moving away from that experience of having to have an event such as a meeting and then go away and record the meeting minutes and distribute them to somebody via an email or something. And now we can get to a point where those things are always kept together in the cloud as a dynamic experience, adding more context to the communications going on. Again, improving speed, improving productivity, improving innovation. And finally, the next level of journey is when we get to what I've labelled here semantic communications. And semantic just adds a level of meaning, which means analytics, the whole discussion around big data. So we can collect all the collaboration and communication that's going on and start analysing that and finding new meaning and new ways we can drive our business forward. So it's an exciting time as we go down this path, and we're just at the start of this journey. So we're looking forward to where we're going to end up in the next few years. Next slide, if we can.
Yeah, we had a question. We've just got 5 minutes left, so I want to jump to this question from Christine. She says, do you see the key to change management adoption being the empathic support of the human end user? And I think that's really where this lies, because the technology is growing rapidly. We just need the people to adopt it.
That's right, exactly right. And people to reimagine on what they want at it and how they want to experience these technology and how they want to service their customers. Because I truly believe we're not limited by the technology. Now we're limited by imagining how we want to interact with each other and how we want to interact with our customers.
Excellent.
Okay,
let's go.
Yeah, we'll just go to the last slide here, and Dustin, I know we've got a few minutes. And I'll just touch on briefly on a Telstra difference. All the things that were spoken about is where I spend my time and Telstra spends time to help our customers by driving innovation because of things like working with global leading partners and exposing our networks to customers so they can build their own platforms. The networks are a massive importance here, and the reach of those to have a wall-to-wall experience across Australia and the globe, across mobile networks and the webs are very critical. This discussion around integration and that no organisation is an island and wants to communicate with others is important. So that level of interoperability and transcoding and translating is very important to be able to reach out beyond the perimeter of your own organisation. And the service experience about supporting end users, supporting their physical environment is all very important. And I want to share that as the sort of the focus areas where Telstra is investing to help our customers and realise the benefits of where the journey is on collaboration technologies. Next slide, Dustin. We've got a...
Yeah, we've got a quick poll question. Yeah, and I'm going to pose this to the audience, and that's, how do you see the role of unified communication solutions? Do you see it as a necessary cost? Do you see it as a chance to transform the internal structure? Is it a chance to change how we interact with customers? Or is it completely unnecessary entirely? So while those populate, I do have a couple of questions. We have just 4 minutes left here in the conversation. I had a question come in from Dave, and he's talking about what happens if things are recorded in these solutions, and in the future, as we see more video, there may be issues with recording and privacy and a variety of things. How do we deal with that?
Well, the whole topic of data sovereignty is an amazing topic, and it's one that each organisation is going to have to think about how they want to treat their communications, whatever it is, voice, video, content communications. In many ways, having data, control your data is critical, and we've got to support that, so where that data is stored, but just as importantly, how that data is transmitted and encrypted. So having security around that, I think, is one of the critical elements of it. And security not just of the data, but also the identity of the people that want to communicate or transport that data. It's a topic that's going to require all of us to solve those technologies and solve those experiences. And so there are capabilities around that. My personal view is that the standards and the technologies for identity and security are just about sorted. And there is a way that we can sort of ensure that every customer's data is secured and available to them and controlled on the way they wish to be controlled. But the issue of sovereignty across various geographies is a big topic.
All right, so unfortunately we've run out of time, but I do highly recommend that folks look up the case study, The Future Ways of Working for 400 George Street and Telstra. It's an amazing story for ways that these have all been used. And we are, like I said, just out of time, so I want to thank you for taking a few minutes and joining us. I want to thank Dustin Kehoe from IDC for providing this information, a lot of valuable research there, as well as Boris for talking us through some of the different ways that we can employ it in business. There's a lot that we need to do here to get ready for the future, and I think a lot of room for us to grow as well. So, gentlemen, thank you very much for your time. This event will be recorded and available for you on demand. If you missed any portion of it or you want to go back and review it, it'll be available for you, and you'll get an email about that in about a day. So thank you very much for taking some time. A survey will pop up for you in just a moment. Let us know what you liked here, what you didn't like, what you'd like to see more of in the future. In fact, I think the data sovereignty issue is a very good one and one that we should come back to. So again, thank you very much. I'm Justin Cleveland. This has been a Telstra virtual event.